All right, so looking at your artist statement, it starts off with more of a bio, which it's okay to have a little bit of a bio in your artist statement. And it does kind of set the tone for it, but I think that first paragraph is mostly just a bio. It also gets a little bit confusing when you start talking about your grandmother because the hers, I don't know who you're talking about, right? So is that image tucked in between her grandmother, so your grandmother's Bible, that let you know the importance of a photograph? It would be more than 20 years before she. So is that referring again back to your grandmother? So that kind of back and forth, speaking in third person, gets a little bit confusing for me as I'm reading that. And then this is what I see as your artist statement. So I would say this is just a bio and this is your artist statement. And you might want to fill that out a little bit more. So you're inspired by your upbringing in Hawaii, embedded with symbolism of faith and culture. You'll find elements of both throughout her artwork, her work of art. So I would explain that a little bit more. Like when you've told me, when I've asked you questions, especially when I was talking to you on that Zoom meeting about what an object was, it's so interesting and it gives so much more meaning to your images. So talking a little bit about what the objects are that you're bringing in or how you're related to them, not necessarily a specific object, but just filling it in a little bit more, I think would be helpful. And then here it sounds like, opposed to an artist statement, this is for commercial work, so less of an artist statement, which is fine, but working with the client and from print to delivery. So it moves a little bit more towards like the business side of things, which is fine. All right, and then looking at your images, so you have two images, they're both shot outside. This is for sure the stronger of the two images. You said you weren't using any artificial light, so you're just using natural light here. I'm wondering how much editing you're doing in post-processing to be able to get this to match up, right? I can't imagine that you're able to get a good exposure on her and a good exposure on the sky at the same time. So I'm wondering how much post-processing is going on. Now, this image is really beautiful and I think very natural looking. Her skin, let's look at it a little bit closer without getting too large. Her skin looks like it's been touched up on her face and on her neck and then not on her stomach. So there's this like glow that's happening here that really falls off on her stomach and on her leg. So if you're going to do this sort of post-processing, I would do it all the way throughout the body and not just stop on the face, because then it starts to look more artificial, right? It makes her look really made up and then the rest of her body kind of falls flat. And part of the intent of this image is really to show her body and show her pregnant stomach, right? The beauty of that. So having that same like glow, like kind of glamour glow, if you will, on her body that you have on her face and chest, I think is important. But this is a really beautiful picture. This is definitely more successful. This image just doesn't look like it's sharp. So as I look closer, um, it looks like there's camera shake happening. It's at 1/80th of a second. So I'm not sure that it's camera shake, but even these rocks don't look totally still. So I have a feeling that it is camera shake and not that they moved. There's definitely movement in them, but as I look back here, I think there's just movement throughout. So this image I would probably edit out because I don't think it's totally sharp. And you have the larger file, so you can look at it larger and look at the details and see where the focus or the sharpness falls off. But this doesn't look like it's sharp. It looks like there's that like double vision kind of thing happening there and on this area and then on their faces. So take a closer look at that. If it is not completely 100% sharp, I would edit it out of your series. I don't think it's worth having any images with technical flaws in your final portfolio. All right, and then looking at this in comparison to the rest of your series, that's a big question, right? So we have, let's take these out because we just have that final image now. And you can pick whichever you wanted of these, but when we're looking at all of these, right now these stand out as looking very different than what we have in these studio shots. But I think if you fill this out, if you have, I think we've talked about having like 5 images that are shot outside. I think it could all work together, especially if you keep that traditional theme with it. And sometimes in portfolios, you'll see kind of a transition where you'll start all in studio and then you'll move to outdoor images. And even more so, if you're looking at this as a commercial portfolio, something you'd show to clients, then having both of those would be important because that's what you're trying to sell your client, right? That you can do indoor portraits, you can do beach portraits, all of these would interest your client base. So I think having both of them would make sense um, in your final portfolio, but you're going to have to fill it out a little bit more, and you already know that. But in order to get that balance to happen. So right now, if I'm looking at it, I'm taking these 2 images out of your final series right now. And all of these I'm looking at, not this image either. These images are what I'm looking at as your final, what we're putting in your final portfolio right now. So if there's any of those that need to come out, let me know. But I think we could work these all together, especially if we can find a way to start to transition. Even just these two kind of being in the middle there, those kind of start to open it up to a more natural, like they're a little bit brighter, and then we move into here from these really darker images. So starting to figure out that transition as you get more images, well, we can work on that together.